Okay, Sharon, we're recording.
Okay. Hi, good morning. Okay, Tov, Shavua Tov. Thank you everybody for coming as always. We're on volume 14. Those who have a look yet?
We already did 1 through 13. We did 1 through 13.
1 through 13 we're done. And if you're coming volume 1, he said 2 through 13 we're fine. But okay, so we're making our way through the meal. Last week we discussed Mayim Achronim. We went through Brachot during the meal. We went through Mayim Achronim. We're almost on Birkat HaMazon. Before that, we're going to get to Zimun. Today's topic is Zimun. Lots of interesting and common relevant questions have come up regarding halachot of Zimun. I want to start at the end, page 107. 107. On page 107 in your books, a number of these shiurim at the end. There are short machshava pieces just before we go back to the halakha. So you'll see the Abu Draham, who's one of the commentators, says the following in source number 43, explaining what is this idea of zimun that we have before Birkat HaMazon. You know, when 3 or more men eat together, we'll discuss zimun for women as well. That's one of the topics that's going to come up. But when you have a group that eats together, you don't just say the regular Birkat HaMazon, there's a certain invitation, a certain designation which is added at the beginning as well. It says the Abu Draham, source number 43, the idea here is to increase the praise and the glory of the Creator, שמזמנים ומתוועדים יחד להודות לו, לשבחו, לפארו, על שפע טובתו, כמו שנאמר ונאמר שמו יחדיו. In other words, when we are sitting together, we're together to come. It's not just each individual by themselves offering Birkat HaMazon, but we want to reach a different level. All together, we know we have this principle. Throughout Halakha, here we quote the Pasuk. It says, which we say we take out the Sefer Torah, together we will glorify His name. We know Barov Am Hadrat Melech is a halachic principle. For example, all other things being equal, just one example where this comes up. Person has the opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah. Let's say davening. All other things are equal, right? Which shul should a person daven? I don't think you should daven in this one. But everything else being equal, you have 2 shuls. One is, and you don't have a preference for either one, but one has got more people in and one has got less people in. So you go where there are more people because we say, Barov Am Hadrat Melech. When you can fulfill a mitzvah together with more people, there's something greater about that. And that is the idea here behind the Zimun. You see the Pnei Halakha. Source number 44, he elaborates a little bit on this. You have 3 people who ate bread together. This we'll see. This is not just an option. It's not something you can do. It's something which you must do. And we'll talk as well precisely what that introduction is. When people gather together, there is great power in that.
Create something new.
Oh, which is greater than the sum of its parts. And the minimum amount, what we call a group, consists of 3 people. So you have 3 people, you have a group with each together, and the idea is, Pirkei Avot goes through as well, this idea, that it's not just about getting physical benefit and enjoyment from the food, but the meal itself becomes elevated, it becomes a social interaction as well, and more than that, so too the spiritual aspect of the Birkat HaMazon that has a greater status as well. He goes on, Soloveitchik over the page, elaborates on this concept too. We won't read it inside. So let's go back to the beginning, and let's now discuss some of the halachot of Zimun. Who says a Zimun? How do we say a Zimun? Does one have to say a Zimun? What if you're eating with a group of people and somebody needs to leave early? What if not everybody ate bread? So these are some of the questions which come up really masim b'chol. So we're on page 83 now. Looking back, 83 in the PDF, it should be probably the first page and the second page. And we have the source of Zimun is in Igmar Masechet Brachot, really in the Mishnah. Source number 1. Mishnah says, Shlosha shachlu ka'achat chayavin lezamen. you have three who ate together, and they need to make a zimmer. That's also a question we have to discuss. What does it mean to eat together? How exactly do we define it? Says the Gemara, what is the source of this? Of the idea of zimmer. That's the pasuk from Tehillim that we saw before. That is one source where it says call out to Hashem, right? Call out, exalt His name together. That is the opinion of Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Abahu Amar Me'acha. He learns it from a different pasuk, which is Kishem Hashem Yakra Havugodeh Le'Elokeinu. Right? When Moshe Rabbeinu says to the people, he says, when I call out the name of Hashem, give praise to our God. This the Gemara also learns out. The point. Those are the key words. Here in source number 2, so we see, and that would be the simple explanation of the Gemara. Quotes a pasuk. The pasuk is the source. That's Zimun, is a Torah level obligation. So that is the right. That is the first opinion. The second opinion we have over the page, in source number 3, is the Meiri. The Meiri is very interesting. The Meiri was one of the Rishonim, for whatever reason, for a long time. He lived in Provence. You can see a biography on page 84. But for many centuries, the works of the Meiri were not available to us, and they were only discovered much later. We have access to many of the writings of the Meiri, which certainly in the days of the Rishonim there was not access to these. And it's an interesting discussion, I think, about why I mentioned it here before Pesach when we had the Yom Yom. What do we do with manuscripts, with works of the Rishonim which were not available, that were not part of the halachic discussion? And now we have those works, and now we have that information. Do we say, can we speculate that the Beit Yosef would have passed differently in certain instances? Had he seen this? That is a fascinating discussion. It's something to bear in mind regarding the Meiri, that many of these works were discovered later. But in any event, his opinion, source number 3, he says, so Birkat HaMazon, and we'll discuss this in future Shiurim, that the obligation of benching, that is certainly from the Torah. However, Torah, he says, no, the zimun itself is not from the Torah. So he quotes the pasuk right from the Gemara. We find this many places. Or we could say the pasuk is an asmachta ba'alma, meaning the Rabbanan found a certain hint. They found an allusion in a pasuk from the Torah, from where they established this principle. But nonetheless, the obligation of zimun is the Rabbanan, and most of the Rishonim, most of the poskim seem to agree with this. Says the Mishnah Berurah in source number 4. He says the Ashmuchu Rabbanan Akra. They brought a pasuk from where it was, where it can be alluded to. The mashma, what does that pasuk mean? One person, one individual will say to the others, right, raise up, praise Hashem with me. Or the other pasuk, we'll see as well. If there are more than 3, if there are 10, then the zimun as well acquires an additional status. But it seems to be that it is the Rabbanan. Okay, the text, what do we mean when we say zimun? So we know we have printed in the Birkonim nowadays, you have the introduction of B'tay Nevarech, etc. That's the Ashkenazi formulation. Some of them have a slightly different formulation. Then the truth is, this includes a number of introductory words, additional things over that which is written in the Mishnah and the Gemara. And that's why, since it came later, that seems to be why as well there is a discrepancy between the different minhagim. But the strict requirement of zimun we see in the Mishnah on source number 5, we're on page 86. The Mishnah tells us, Keitzad mezamnim. So how do we recite the zimun? What does it include? B'shlosha omer nevarech, b'asara omer nevarech le'elokeinu. That's it. Essentially, zimun is when you in one Hebrew lechazmin, it says when you invite somebody, but lechazmin, to invite or to designate. Essentially, we're saying that we are inviting everybody to come and bench together by saying essentially the word nevarech, let us bless. That is the zimun. That's it. Now, when you have, that says the Mishnah, that's when you have 3. When you have 10, once we have a minyan, then we can increase, then we can say the name of Hashem as well. We have to. The Mishnah does list when you have, this is not the way we're going to Pascha, but there is an idea that when you have more people, when you have 100, you change the formula of zimun. When you have 1,000, you change the formula of zimun, right? And then it says in the next paragraph, the same way that the one who is leading, the one who says the zimun would say that. So too, they answer back from it. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Matzinu b'Beit HaKnesset, Echad ma'abin v'echad ma'atin omer Baruch Hu Hashem, Rabbi Yishmael omer Baruch Hu Ez Hashem Hamvorach. So, in other words, says Rabbi Akiva, however many you have fewer, you have more, you're still going to say the same formula. The only difference will be whether you have 3 or whether you have 10. This is going to be enough kamina as well, where if you're in a group, and if you're in a group of 10, what happens if you split up and you want to have 2 separate zimun? So if you have 10 people, you have 19 people, and if you split up, so 10 people are going to make one zimun, the other 9 would make a different zimun, they are going to lose the status of the zimun they would have had if they had more than 10. So that's going to be something the Poskim will discuss. Whereas opposed to if you had 6, so if you have 3 and 3, there's not going to be any change in the zimun that will be said. So says the Shulchan Aruch, source number 6, he says, you had 3 people eating together, they were reclining, right? That's the way that it was. Nowadays, we know we don't recline except for Pesach, but that is the terminology that's used in terms of eating together. So, and again, you'll notice this is not the way that we begin the zimun. We say other things beforehand, but this is what the Shulchan Aruch says. This is required. The first one says Nevarech Shachanu Mishalo, and they'll answer back Baruch Shachanu Mishalo Tavo Chayinu, and then he goes back and he answers again Baruch Shachanu Mishalo Tavo Chayinu, and then he begins benching, and points out page 87 on the second paragraph. You see, it says En Lomar Nevarech Leilokeinu B'Lamed. It says you say we bless Hashem, but don't say with the Lamed bless to our God. And then he says Ben Sheyu Asara or Me'ah or Elef or Rizor. This is to explain that we don't accept that opinion in the Mishnah. That whether you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, it's all the same. It's all the same zimun. Anybody who changes from the formula, that is ignorant. This is the nusach which Chachamim gave, and this is what we have to go by. Shem Asara, when there are 10, when there are 10, you mention the name of Hashem as well. Okay, now the Mishnah Berurah introduces a little bit of a different formulation, which is familiar to us. Before we say Nevarech, he says, the Zohar, he's here Lama B'Piv Kodem Bekat Hamazon, Ten Lanu Akos Nevarech. or Bo v'nevarech. Quotes from the Zohar that says before you begin the zimun, you need sort of an introduction even to that. So therefore, anytime we come to a mitzvah, any davar shebikdusha, we need to initiate it beforehand, and therefore it's in bold mizeno agim lomar b'lishon Ashkenaz rabotai milvin benchen, or as we say in Hebrew, rabotai nevarech. That is the opening of the zimun. Then when in Yishem Hashem Barach Metav Adolam, that is sort of the introduction, that is beforehand, and then we say the formula of nevarech, nevarech Elokeinu, etc. There are those who even before that would have this based on this discussion. Some people, any time when they do a mitzvah, will say, l'shem yifud, good job, or hineni muchanu mizuman. That's the same words, muchanu mizuman. And we still have it sometimes in our siddurim for certain. But there are those who say for Sfirat HaOmer. Actually, a very interesting discussion going back a few hundred years whether one should say it or whether one should not say it. There were certain poskim are very, very opposed to adding in the extra formulation, based on Kabbalistic formulations before doing mitzvot. But that is where it comes from, based on the Zohar, and that is what the Mishnah Berurah tells us over here. And if you turn over the page, in case you forgot, you can see the text of the Zimun, source 9 and 10. There is the Ashkenazi text, which begins with Rabotai Nevarech, the Sephardi practice, which is Havlam V'Nevrech Malkai LaKadisha, and everybody answers back Shamayim. But then the main formulation of Zimun is essentially the same for both. Okay, one of the questions which is discussed at great length by the poskim, Rishonim and Achronim, is what about women? Are women obligated in a zimun? And there are a couple of different questions here. One question would be, we said 3 that eat together. So we said 3 men who eat together. Would a woman be included as well? Could a woman join with men for a zimun? That is one question which is discussed. A second question would be, what if women are eating by themselves? Could you have 3 women together to make a zimun, as opposed to 3 men? That is a second scenario. Also, what if you have one man who's eating at a Shabbos table, whatever, one man eating together with 3 or more women? Would the woman make a zimun, and should the man answer to the zimun? And then the opposite case is where the men are already making a zimun, should the woman be answering, and do the women have to stay and answer to the zimun? So those are three different scenarios. Let's go through them one by one. So we're on page 90. The Mishnah in Masechet Brachot tells us, Nashim v'avadim uktanim and mizamnim aleihem, gives us categories of people who are not included in the zimun, and the simple explanation is that when there is not the obligation, as we know, we have a principle throughout mitzvot, ben adam l'makom, ben adam l'chavero, that somebody who themselves is not obligated in a certain mitzvah cannot fulfill the mitzvah for other people. So, if the obligation for zimun on women is not the same as it is on men, in the same way that the obligation on a katan is not the same as the obligation on a gadol, then they would not be able to join together to form the zimun. And that is the approach, seems to be, of the Mishnah Berurah, here in source number 12. He writes, if you had, for instance, 2 men and 1 woman, or a katan, or whoever else, eating together with them, they would not join in to form a group of 3 for the zimun. Because they are not obligated in the zimun in the same way. Even if they wanted to form a zimun together, they are not allowed. He says this is worse. You might say the following. You might say, if there is a situation whereby women who eat by themselves, we're going to talk about it soon. Essentially, there's a machloket rishonim, with 3 women eat together. Are they allowed to make a zimun, or do they have to make a zimun? Those are 2 different opinions in the rishonim. But you can say if 3 women together by themselves could make a zimun, so what difference does it make? If you have 3 women, or you have 2 men and 1 woman, why can't they join together? He says no. He says here it's worse. He says the obligation itself is not the same. Part of where we know the obligation is not the same is going to be from the following halakha. We said that if you have 3 men together and make a zimun, and you say you have 1 formulation. When you have 10 together, we change the formulation. We add in the word Elokeinu. Right? Would you add in the word Elokeinu? It's 10 women making a zimun together? The answer is no. because that is derived, that is similar to where we have a minyan. The requirements for a minyan is, and a derived shabish b'shai is 10 men, and therefore, in a similar way, the obligation therefore is of a different status, different nature of obligation. Therefore, they don't join together.
Is the obligation one of you could bench? For instance, if you have 3 men, 2 of them washed, and the third one did not. The third one.
So the question is, if not everybody ate bread, only some of the people did and some didn't, would it be the same obligation? So we'll get to that. The Poskim discuss, that is predictably the answer is Machloket. Very good. Very exemplary. But when we see, or the fact that if a woman by themselves may not have an obligation at all, they may have permission to make a zimmer, but maybe not an obligation, whereas men would have an obligation. So therefore, it's not the same level of chiyuv. Therefore, they don't join together. Another reason says the Mishnah Berurah, and this is obviously going to depend, and it may change to an extent depending on cultural context. But says the Mishnah Berurah, Mishum she'en chavertan na'eh she'at tziruf shel shlosha al-yedei nashim, meaning that there is a certain, for reasons of modesty and for reasons of to make a formal joining together between men and women is less proper when it's a mixed group rather than when it is one group by itself. If we can discuss based on this, what about in the context of a family setting, where there is certainly nothing improper about you sitting at a table, you have a Shulchan Shabbat, and you have men and women, brothers and sisters, siblings and parents all together. There is nothing immodest about that. Would there therefore be a change in terms of, do we say that men and women can join together, even if we say they can't join together to form a zimun, but in just the family setting, could they? There are poskim who say yes. The majority of poskim still say that no, we say lo plug, that doesn't make a difference, and that is and that's how it goes. So Pniyana Halacha, source number 13, explains similarly. And what we have in number 14, so all the poskim agree that when we're counting 3 for a zimun, we don't count men and women together. 3 men would make a zimun. Well, what about 3 women by themselves? Does that make a zimun? And that, the Gemara in Masechet Erechim, source number 14, says yes. It says, to include these other categories which are not obligated together with men in the same way, meaning that if you have 3 women by themselves, they make a zimun. Now, as I said, which is a different category, which also, because an Eved Ivri the same way is also patur, exempt from certain mitzvot, and therefore does not have the same chiyuv. So therefore, he could not join with somebody else to make a zimun. 3 Avadim by themselves. Again, this is not relevant nowadays because we don't really have this reality. But women, of course, we have, and therefore 3 women by themselves can make a zimun. But as we said, the question is they can make a zimun or they should make a zimun? So, source number actually doesn't break. We don't actually have the Rishonim here inside, but if you see page 92, you'll see there's a box there which says, according to Tosfot, women's zimun is merely optional, but according to the Rosh, women are indeed obligated to form a zimun as are men. So how does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? It says the paskin according to Tosfot. It's a little bit nuanced. See 16. Nashim is not la'atzman, rishut. Right. So if you have 3 women by eating or more eating by themselves, if they want to make a zimun, they are allowed to. They are not required. However, in other words, you have 3 or more men at the table, and therefore there is an obligation that there needs to be a zimun at this meal. Then the women who are part of the meal are required to answer to that as well. Biur Halacha, source number 17, he says, Nashim is not that mamushut. That was the Shulchan Aruch, following Tosfot. There's Data Gra, the Biurosh, Ha'ikal Ka'arosh, the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah, Shenashim is not le'atzman. Well, it says the Vilna Gaon, no, it's not just reshut, it is actually an obligation for women to make a zimun as well. However, it says the Biur Halacha, and it's not clear if he is quoting the Gra on this last line or he's saying his own opinion, but he says, and this is not a common practice for whatever reason. Again, in some places there are, and has become more popular, more commonplace maybe in recent years, but that is the halakha. Source number 18, which is the halakha brura, which is a more contemporary sefer, says the following as well. He says, Shalosh nashim she'achlu beyachad, אף על פי שאינן חייבות בזימון, מכל מקום אם מצאו לזמן רשאות לעשות. He says again, like the Shulchan Aruch, not like the Gra, that if they want to make a zimun, they are allowed to, they're not required to, strictly speaking. He says, "Bizmanenu lo nagua nashim lezamen la'atzman." Every place you have to see what the common practice is. He says that the common practice is that this is not done. Nonetheless, mikol makom, tov sheyazamnu la'atzman, la'tzet yedei harishonim hasovrim shechayavot lezamen. It would be a good practice in order to do the zimun and to fulfill the obligation of those rishonim who say that it is required. Again, if there are more than 3 men at the meal and the zimun is being done in any event, then that is what is done. Nothing more is required. Nothing more should be done. We're talking about a scenario where you don't have the zimun of men, but you have a zimun of women, and that is, according to all poskim, as we've seen, that is certainly permissible and is appropriate.
If women are not obligated, except because it's a mitzvah, the reason they're not obligated to be mizimnot is what? Because it's a time-bound mitzvah.
That's an interesting question. Why would it be? So we'll discuss in the future in terms of regarding Birkat HaMazon. There is some discussion whether Birkat HaMazon itself would be a time-bound mitzvah or not, because you have a certain amount of time from within which you've eaten until when you can say the brachot. Consensus of the poskim is that Birkat HaMazon itself, women are obligated. But regarding the zimun, it's not completely clear as in why it would be. Maybe because, as you said, it's a devash b'kedusha, and therefore they were not included. Maybe it's just midrabanan; they did not include them in the takana. Certainly, if we say that zimun is a chiyuv to rabbanan, well, it's probably easier to say that rabbanan just established it in this way for men and without the obligation. It would seem difficult to say that strictly as a time-bound mitzvah. Okay, but good question. Okay, let us see the next, just over the page, course number 20, which is the Nina once again of Melamed. He says, "Sarich litchazek b'kiyum ha'chazor, ki pa'amim rabot kshe'ochlim b'seuda mishpachtit shlosha gvarim v'od nashim." למרות שאנשים חייבות בזימון, שוכחים להקפיד שכל נשים ישתתפו בזימון. So here he's talking about, again, the other side, where the zimun is made. We'll talk about this later as well. Sometimes, men have this problem. You go to a wedding, or you go to a long meal, whatever it is, and you want to leave early about the zimun, and sometimes people just bench by themselves. So it's often accepted, it's often understood that the men need to make the zimun, but the women don't. What he's telling us here is, no, you're at a meal where there is a zimun. Whoever was a part of that meal, including the women, are obligated. And therefore, he says we should strengthen fulfillment of the samacha, and we should learn about it and know about it and fulfill it. Okay, interesting discussion on page 95, which is in terms of, so we spoke about men and women in terms of. Sorry.
You missed some of the issues in this. I come from a family where the women substantially outnumber the men. And on a number of occasions, both in England and in Israel, we've been told by guests that where there's women and women, and there's only 1 or 2 men, that the man should be meant to lead the table while the women are doing this. And it has caused a lot of embarrassment and feeling. I've not seen anything here that deals with this issue.
Okay,
so a boss leave the table when the women are making decisions.
Okay, good question. I thought it was coming later in the book. It's actually here on the footnote. They've hidden it in footnote number 11. So if you have a look, go back to page 92. Again, which is a very good question. If the women are making the zimun as such, and there's only 1 or 2 men at the table, so should the man be present? Should he answer or not? So footnote number 11. A number of contemporary poskim discuss whether a man present during a woman's zimun should respond or not. So Moshe Sternberg discourages women from forming a zimun when men are present. He writes the question of whether women are permitted to or obligated to recite a zimun pertains only to where no men are present, but if one or two more men are present, they should not form a zimun. So presumably those who you mentioned were following this opinion. That is one, it's the opinion of Rav Sternberg. On the other hand, it's quoted here in the name of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that 1 or 2 men present during a woman's zimun should actually respond with the standard response for zimun. So there are those poskim who say no, men should not be present at all, and there are those who say that the men should in fact answer to the zimun. And then there's a third in-between approach, which you can see online, which I haven't actually seen. So I'm not sure what the third in-between approach is. But those are two of those two of the opinions. So yeah, it seems well, never as long as I'm an Arbach, they'll be perfectly adequate to remain there, and even to answer to the thing. Okay. Now Jeremy's happy, we can move on to page 95. So we discussed men and women forming a zimun. What about children? The Gemara here has a discussion that a katan may possibly be counted as the third member of the zimun. Says the Gemara in Brachot, source number 21. Right? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So here he talks about a child who is in terms of age is still considered a katan, but in terms of physical maturity has reached the stage whereby he could be included. And the Gemara over here has a little bit of a discussion as to whether a child can be included as part of the zimun or not. Here we are certainly talking about a case where you have two adult men, and we're just talking about the last one to be added on or not. If you look at the last paragraph of the Gemara, tells a story. Interesting. A number of places the Gemara tells us stories about Abaye and Rabba when they were children. You know, even before Pesach as well. The Gemara there has a discussion about Abaye and Rabba as children asking the Manish Kana. Here the Gemara tells us Abaye and Rabba. Yet they come into Rabba. And in the third paragraph in source number 21. Amalu Rabba lemim v'achim. So they were sitting there and in front of Rabba. And they were children. And Rabbi said, who do we bless to? Right? Who do we say Birkat Hamazon? Amrulei, L'Rachmana. Say to Hashem. L'Rachmana heicha Yaakov. The song. Hashem is here. Hashem is there. Hashem is truly everywhere. He said to them, where is he? So Rabba, Achvei L'Shmei Ta'ala. He pointed to the heavens. Abaye Nafik L'Bala Achvei Klapei Shemayan. Abaye also went outside and pointed up. Where's Hashem? He's up there. Okay. So this was apparently a very profound answer from his children. Amaru Rabba Tarvaichu Rabbanan Havitu. It does not mean that every child who can point up to the sky is going to become a sage in Israel, but that was what Rabba understood there from the way they answered the question. But the point of the Gemara here is to teach you that sometimes you can have a child who understands the meaning of Birkat Hamazon may be included as part of the zimun. So we see what the Rishonim say about this. The Rif on page source number 22 says Amar Nachman Katan Shodeh Lemim Vachim Mezamin Alav, quotes the Gemara that says that a katan, again, it's not dependent on the fact they've reached bar mitzvah. It's not dependent on the fact they've reached the age or the physical maturity, but they have Yodeh Lemim Vachim. He says that can be included as the zimun, but can help katan, and so that is the halacha. The Amri Ravuta, Bush Nechnas B'Shnat 13 Shana. That's another opinion that says it's dependent on age. He says the Rif. I do not agree with that opinion. But what I say is the Kevan the Karele Katan. Since the Gemara talks about a Katan, says Afilu ben Eser u ben Teisha, even if he's 9 or 10 years old, so Yodeh Lemim V'Achin Mizam Nimanav says that is the halacha. The Rosh disagrees. He says no. He says it's only if he's reached the stage of physical maturity, if he has to produce 2 pubic hairs, that is the close to the age of bar mitzvah, and then he could count as part of the zimun, not a younger child than that. And how do we paskin? Says the Shulchan Aruch, source number 24. He says katan shegiel onata prutot. Once he's going to reach the age of young children, in other words, the age of chinuch, seemingly, he understands to whom we say Birkat Hamazon. Very interesting. Says the Shulchan Aruch that a young child, again not too young, but 9 or 10, presumably who understands what Birkat Hamazon is, can be added as the 3rd member of the zimun or as the 10th member of the zimun. That is the Shulchan Aruch, and this is the way that's Svardim Paskin. The Ramah disagrees. He says, yes, the mitzvah to klal ache ben 13 shana as machazkina naked godo shevish teisavu. Right? Says the Ramah, the chiddush that what we can be lenient about. That nowadays we don't check for the physical signs. He says once a person, in order for a child, you consider an adult, halachically, you need two conditions. You need both the age and also the physical signs of physical maturity. It says once he's reached the age, so we have as a chazakah that we assume that condition is fulfilled as well. But unlike the Shulchan Aruch, who says that even a young child can be considered part of the zimun, the Rama says no. So this would be, at the end of the day, a machloket, Ashkenazim and Sfardim. You can see source number 27, V'zot HaBracha, which is a contemporary sefer on Hilchot Brachot, number of different editions. And he says, yeah, Katan, B'nai Ashkenaz einam mitzafim Katan, ach B'nai Sfarad mitzafim Katan zimun b'shlosha. So Ashkenazim would not include a Katan, whereas Sfardim would. Okay. That means that he's included as one of the three in order to say zimun. If there are only two adult males there and there's a child, can you do the zimun on them? So Ashkenazim would say no, and Sfardim would say yes. Okay. Now,
isn't the opposite? B'nai Ashkenaz einam mitzafim v'Sfarad.
Yeah, in other words, Ashkenazim the child would not join together for the zimun. You would not have a zimun.
For Ashkenaz.
For Ashkenaz. He has to be bar mitzvah. For Ashkenaz. For Sfarad, it's possible below as well. Okay, a very common question which comes out, Mark alluded to earlier, is what if not everybody ate bread? And here you have two scenarios. One is where you have three people eating together or more, but only two ate bread. Could you say the zimun at all? And when you have more than 10 people, but not the 10 people do not eat bread, more than 3 ate bread, but less than 10, would you say Nevarech Elokeinu? Would you say Hashem's name as well? This is a question which comes up every week at Sudash Rishit, for example. Very, very often you have more than 10 people, but less than 10 people who wash. So the Gemara Masechet Brachot, source number 28 on page 99. Amar Rav Yehuda Breder of Shmuel Bar Shilat Mishmei Darav. Tisha achlu dagan ve'echad achal yerek mitztafim. He says if you have 9 people who ate bread, it's great, but it seems to be bread, and one who ate yerek, so one who did not, one ate together with them, but did not eat hamotzi. Mitztafim, they can join together. They can join, meaning you can join together and say Hashem's name. Okay.
It doesn't say lechem. It says dagan.
Right.
And grain. So that's mizona.
So there's a question. So well, for the moment, let's keep it simple. You're right. It does say specifically dagan. It seems to be the simple, and there'll be a discussion here. Does that mean that all of them ate bread specifically, or even ate mizona? But the simple understanding for now, let's say certainly if they ate, if you have 9 who ate bread, and you have 1 who ate even ate vegetables, or adama, whatever it is, you could still have the 10 together. And it's possible that it may be some of them ate mizonot, but then that's going to get a bit more complicated. So let's stick with a more simple case first. Okay. Amar Bizera, Ba'imine Rav Yehuda Shmoneh Mal. So if you have 9, well, we'll go the criteria, and only 1 who did not, you could still join together. What if you had 8? What if you had 7? So he says, so long as you go down to 6, that is sufficient. Meaning that you still have, so long as you have the majority together who ate bread, again according to a simple understanding here in the Rishonim, that would be you could still add in Hashem's name. So Shulchan Aruch, source number 29, he says Tish'a she'achlu dagan ve'echad achal k'vayit yarek mitztafin nazki Hashem ואפילו לא תיבר עמהם אלא בציר או לא שתה להם אלא כוס אחד שיש בו ריבית. So if you have 10 people who ate together, but only 9 of them ate bread, and the last one just ate a small amount of food or a small amount of drink, whatever it is, and this was water. The Shulchan Aruch says if the 10th one had just drank water, that's not enough to join in with them. והוא שיהיה המברך אחד מאוכלי הפת. You can see as well, the Shulchan Aruch guy says specifically the language of bread. So he says if the one who is leading should be one of the ones who ate bread. ואפילו 7 אכלו דגן וגימו ירק מצטפן, אבל 6 לא, ורובה דמים כבהם. Okay, so he says, so Shulchan Aruch here is a little bit more machmir. He says you need 7 who have you need 7, so it's a clear majority who ate bread, as opposed to the others. What about that's the case for 10, but what about for 3? That's going to be there's also a very common case, and maybe a little bit more complicated. So it says the Shulchan Aruch here in source number 30, He says, he says, where do we say that if you'd eaten any other food, you could join in with the zimun? That is where you had 9. So you already had the zimun. And we're looking for the extra status to get to 10. To Hashem's name. The first opinion, it's not going to be the last. The first opinion the Shulchan Aruch brings is that if you have 3 people, you need all 3 to eat a kazayit of bread in order to make a zimun. Then he says, opinion number 2, so then there is an opinion that says, so long as they all ate dagan, so long as they all ate bread, meaning mezonot. So if you have 2 who ate bread or 1 who ate mezonot, then you could still join together for a zimun. And then a third opinion, that it's anything. So we have 3 opinions here in the Shulchan Aruch. How do you make a zimun of 3 people? Our first 2 people, Reuven and Shimon ate bread. They want to know if they can make a zimun together with Levi. So according to opinion number 1, only if Levi ate bread as well. Opinion number 2, no, if Levi ate mezonot, that's okay. Opinion number 3, if Levi ate anything except for water, that would be okay. And therefore he says, so those are the 3 opinions. Hilkach, Shnaim Shachlu, Ubashlishi. Therefore you have 2 who were eating and a third came along. If he's going to eat a kazayit of bread, that's the best. If he doesn't want to, if he doesn't want to have bread, don't let him eat anything with you. In other words, not to get into a case of safek. We don't want to enter a case of doubt about whether to make a zimun or not. And if he did eat or drink something, then join for a zimun together. The truth is that nowadays, much more the common practice seems to be to follow the lenient opinion over here. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah brings. He says, nowadays our practice is that if he does not want to join in and eat bread, so then even the katchila can eat or drink whatever he wants, and together with them, and they can together make zimun. Okay, so we've seen. So just a brief recap of summary of the various halachot that we have gone through today. We spoke about the idea of zimun. We said that the Gemara told us that when we saw the hashkafic idea behind it, that when people join together for a meal, it's not just about whenever a group comes together, there's something that elevates the status of that entire interaction. And we want 3 people together, not just to be about food, not just to be about the physical pleasure, but to be about something spiritual. We're giving praise to Hashem. Not just, there is a great difference between each one, saying brachot and offering praise by themselves, as opposed to 3 together as a group. And that is the obligation of zimun. We saw there's a machloket amongst the Rishonim, whether the whole concept of zimun is the oraita or the rabbanan in the first place. Most of the poskim seem to say that it is an idea of the rabbanan. We looked at the text of the zimun. The main text is the idea of nevarech le'elokeinu, or we should bless to Hashem. The one leading the zimun says those words, and everybody else answers back, and then he answers back. We saw that the Mishnah Berurah, based on the Zohar, that we add in introductory lines even before that. So we say Rabbotai nevarech, or whatever it may be. The study custom is slightly different. But that is the language of zimun. We discussed the question of zimun by women as well as by men. And again, what we said was different scenarios. Scenario number 1 is where you have 3 or more men at the table, and however many women there are as well, then the zimun should be led by one of the men, but the women are obligated to answer and to be part of the zimun as well. What if you have less than 3 men, but more than three women? So then we saw that there were different opinions. One opinion that says, well, without the men, but one opinion that says even the men should answer to the zimun that is being said by the women. And if you have 3 or more women by themselves and no men, so then there is a question. We saw certainly it would be appropriate and it would be proper for them to make a zimun by themselves. Discussion whether that is necessary or whether that is optional. But as I said, the poskim do all agree that that is certainly permitted. We then spoke about having a child close to the age of bar mitzvah, be included as number 3 for the zimun. We said that according to Ashkenazim, that is not accepted. According to Sephardim, that would be accepted. What if you're an Ashkenazi who is eating at Sephardim, and therefore this actually happens to be one? where there was so then you can of course follow the custom of your host, and then you could answer to the Zimun. And finally, the last thing we spoke about was the question of where you have not everybody who ate bread, and therefore could you still count them as part of the Zimun or not? So when it comes to a minyan, so long as we have 6, or according to Sfardim 7 people who ate bread, then you could, as long as the others ate and joined in the meal as well, you could say the Zimun with Hashem's name. If it's just 3, we saw different opinions in the Shulchan Aruch, that there's an opinion that says the third individual is required to have had bread, or is required to have had mizonot, or is required to have just eaten together. Said the Mishnah Berurah, bottom line, and this is what we practice nowadays, 2 individuals who had bread, and the third ate something else, you could still make the Zimun. Obviously, the one leading the Zimun needs to be one of the individuals who made bread. And the next, sorry, I'll give you one moment. The next topic, which we won't cover today, we'll talk about next week, is what happens when somebody needs to leave the meal before the Zimun, right? You're at a wedding, or you're at an event, whatever it may be, and there are many people you need to leave. And how should you go about that? Because you are obligated in the Zimun. Would it be okay? Would it be sufficient to therefore make your own Zimun with 3, when in fact there are more than 10 people there? That's another question. And there's another discussion in terms of different groups. Sometimes you have this in yeshivas or in other places, even at wedding halls, where there are many people at different tables. Is it considered that you're all eating together, or are those separate meals joined together for a Zimun? But we'll discuss that more next week. Yeah.
If you have a large group, one person didn't eat anything, does he answer even though he didn't eat? And or if he had mizonot, what does he do?
So again, if he had mizonot, if he ate, as we've seen, he's an answer part of the day. If somebody did not eat at all, so there is actually a formulation, we've seen some of the Siddurim, for somebody who did not eat, but is present when he hears it's probably not appropriate to hear the praise of Hashem without saying anything. So there is a certain formulation that can be said by somebody who's present but did not eat.
If there are 3 women
Yes.
and 1 man,
Yes.
the man has to get out.
No. So that's what we said. That's footnote number 11. There are poskim who say it'd be better for the man not to be there, and there are poskim who say it's better for the man should be there and should answer. That's brought to the name of Shlomo Zalman. That's what Shlomo Zalman said. You can rely on that. He was our neighbor. David just down there.
Does the man get their own?
It's also.
No, Pastor. There are different practices, different again, but as we've seen, but Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that the man should say that he should go. Yeah, it's good enough for me to say that.
Yeah, it's not be a lot of it, just might be good matters, but in the technical we get up with people often have like bias. Increasingly, people are saying, if men are making a women with men, women make a women with women. The man doesn't need to ask
right. The simple understanding is you're asking permission for the people who are obligated in the Zimun together. If somebody's not included, one wants to say it, one wants to add it again, depending on the social context. If it's a place where it's really unheard of and it's inappropriate, you probably shouldn't do it. If it's a place where it's, that's the norm, there's nothing wrong with saying it.
That's something new.
That is something new. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.